I didn't mean to stop by. I told myself I'd just drop it off. No small talk, no lingering. Just the charger she'd loaned me after class that day, 2 weeks ago. But when she opened the door, barefoot, hair a little undone, the air between us shifted in that quiet way that makes everything suddenly feel like a choice. "Hey," I said. She leaned against the doorframe, one hand still on the knob. "You remembered." Her voice was low, not soft exactly, but steady in a way that made me want to stay. The apartment behind her smelled like coffee gone cold and rain on pavement. The kind of scent that says someone's been thinking too much. I held out the charger. "Figured you might need it back." She smiled, a small, private smile. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. "I owe you something too." Inside, the lights were dim, golden from the lamp by the window. Her books were scattered across the couch, a sweater draped over one arm. It felt lived in, not messy, just unguarded. I didn't know if she meant to let me see that side of her, or if she'd stopped caring who did. She gestured to the table. "You can leave it there." I placed the charger down, but didn't move away right away. She noticed. Her gaze lingered a second too long before she looked away, to the window, then back to me. "You always look like you're about to say something," she said. I let out a small laugh. "You always look like you already know what I'm going to say." That earned me a look, not teasing, not stern, just knowing. For a second, silence stretched thin between us. She brushed her hair behind her ear, fingers trembling just slightly. The kind of tremor you only notice when you're watching too closely. "You still taking photos?" she asked, walking past me toward the counter. "Trying to," I said. "You're still grading too late?" "Trying not to." She gave a small half-smile. "Failing." Her hand grazed mine when she reached for her mug. Not enough to call it a touch, but enough to feel it. I caught a flash of her eyes, the faintest tightening at the corner, as if she'd felt the same current and didn't know what to do with it either. The sound of rain started against the window, soft, rhythmic. The clock ticked, steady, almost too loud. She lifted her mug, then paused. "You look different," she said. "How so?" "Older," she said, then glanced down. Or maybe just less uncertain. That word stayed in the air between us, uncertain. It was what I had been around her for months. And now, standing this close, hearing the way her tone softened at the end of the word, I wasn't sure if I still wanted to fix that. She took a sip, then looked at me again, this time directly. "You should sit," she said. "It's raining. No point in rushing off." So I did. She sat across from me, elbows on the table, chin in her hand. The room hummed with quiet. No background music, no small talk. Just the faint thrum of rain and the sound of her breathing, steady, close. I couldn't look away, and I don't think she wanted me to. Her thumb brushed along the rim of her mug, slow, absent-minded, but her eyes stayed on mine. "You know," she said softly, "sometimes the things we borrow aren't the ones we return." Before I could ask what she meant, there was a knock at the door, sudden, sharp, cutting through the stillness. She froze. Her gaze flicked to the door, then back to me. "Don't move," she whispered. And just like that, the air between us changed again. Charged, waiting, the knock went unanswered. It stopped after a few seconds, then footsteps faded down the hall. The silence that followed felt louder than before, like the room was holding its breath. She exhaled first. "Probably just a neighbor," she said, though her voice wasn't steady. I nodded, but neither of us moved. Her hand still rested on the table, fingers curled slightly, as if she hadn't decided whether to reach for her mug or for me. When she finally did move, it wasn't toward either. She stood and walked to the window. The rain had thickened, turning the glass into silver streaks. She watched it for a while before speaking. "Do you ever feel like you build a life so carefully and still ended up alone in it?" I didn't answer right away. There was something in her tone, not self-pity, just truth worn thin. She turned back to me. That was heavier than I meant it to be." "It's okay," I said. "You don't have to filter it." She gave a short, quiet laugh. "That's the thing about you, Noah. You listen too hard. Makes people say things they shouldn't." She sat again, across from me, but closer this time. Her knee brushed mine under the table. Neither of us moved it away. I learned more about her that night. Not through questions, but through the way she talked. She mentioned a son who'd left for college, a marriage that had ended 2 years ago, but still echoed in the way she paused before using the word was. She didn't dwell on details. She didn't have to. The ache was in the gaps. I told her about drifting after graduation, photography gigs that barely paid, a studio apartment that always smelled like coffee grounds and film chemicals. She smiled faintly. You make it sound romantic. It's not, I said. It's just quiet. Her eyes softened. You're too young to be that lonely. I wanted to tell her age had nothing to do with it, but the way she looked at me made it impossible to find the words. When she stood to refill her cup, I caught the faint scent of her perfume, something warm, unfamiliar. She handed me a towel for my damp jacket, her fingers grazing mine again. This time, neither of us pretended it didn't happen. You should really go before the rain gets worse, she said, but she didn't move away. Maybe I should, I replied, my voice lower than I meant. We were close enough now that I could see the fine lines at the corners of her mouth, the way her breath caught before she said anything. She looked up, eyes steady on mine. This shouldn't feel like this, she murmured. Like what? Her lips parted, but no sound came. Instead, she reached out, not to pull me in, not quite. Just her hand on my arm, her thumb pressing lightly against my sleeve. It wasn't a kiss, not even close, but it left the same kind of mark. For a heartbeat, everything stilled, the rain, the clock, even her breath against my neck. Then she let go, stepped back and whispered, "You should go." But when I turned toward the door, her reflection in the window was still facing me. Not moving, not ready for me to leave. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. I was walking past the cafe near campus, her usual spot, when I caught a glimpse of her through the window. Same corner table, same cup she never finished. I should have kept walking, but she looked up at that exact second, and our eyes caught like something rehearsed by accident. She smiled, small, hesitant, and motioned for me to come in. She was grading papers again, red pen poised in her hand. "You always seem to find me when I'm buried in other people's thoughts," she said. "Maybe I'm bad at timing." "Or maybe," she said, looking up, "you're exactly on time." Her tone was casual, but her hand trembled just slightly as she lifted her cup. I noticed the faintest smudge of lipstick on the rim. I sat. We talked about nothing really. The weather, her cat, the way autumn seemed to make everything quieter. But beneath every word, something pulsed. A pull neither of us could name without breaking it. Then her phone buzzed. A message flashed on the screen. A man's name. She silenced it quickly, too quickly. Her face shifted, not guilt exactly, but the instinct to hide. I didn't ask, but she must have seen something in my expression, because she said quietly, "It's just my ex. He still calls sometimes." I nodded. "You don't owe me an explanation." "I know," she said, eyes softening, "but I gave you one anyway." A shadow passed the window, a colleague of hers, I realized. The man hesitated, eyes narrowing as he looked inside. She saw him too and went still. "Don't look," she whispered. But I already had. She reached across the table. Instinct, maybe, her fingers brushing mine, grounding me. For a moment, her hand stayed there. Then, when her colleague moved on, she let go, exhaling like she'd been holding her breath for hours. "This is ridiculous," she said under her breath. "We haven't even done anything, and it already feels like we're hiding a crime." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. I just looked at her, and she looked back. A long, suspended look that stretched until the air itself felt breakable. The rain had started again when we stepped outside. She stood close beneath the narrow awning, shoulders nearly touching mine. The streetlights turned the drops to gold. "You shouldn't keep doing this," she said softly. "Doing what?" "Looking at me like that." I tried to laugh, but it came out uneven. "You can stop looking back." She smiled, not denial, not agreement, just quiet surrender. Then she shifted closer to avoid the rain, her hand brushing against my chest. Not intentionally, but not entirely by accident either. The air between us narrowed to inches. I could feel her breath, slow, unsteady. Her eyes flicked to my mouth. She started to say something, my name, maybe, but a car horn blared, snapping the moment apart. We both turned away, pretending to watch the street. But our hands were still touching at our sides, neither of us pulling back. The rain kept falling, and for the first time, she didn't tell me to leave. That night, she called me. It was late, too late for anything ordinary. Her voice was quiet, almost fragile. Can you come by? No explanation. No excuse. Just that. I didn't even think. I was already pulling on my jacket. When she opened the door, the lights were off except for one lamp near the couch. She wasn't dressed for company. Oversized sweater, bare feet, hair still damp from shower. I didn't wake you, did I? She asked. I shook my head. No. She stood there for a second, like she was deciding something. Then she stepped aside. Come in. The apartment smelled like rain again, like it had soaked into everything. I noticed the half-finished glass of wine on the table, the phone face down beside it. She sat on the couch, tucking her legs under her. I stayed standing, unsure what this was supposed to be. I shouldn't have called, she said. I couldn't sleep. I sat down, leaving a space between us that didn't last long. Silence crept in, thick and heavy. She broke it first. People talk, she said. At work. About me. About who I spend time with. I looked at her, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. You mean me? She nodded, then finally turned toward me. Does that bother you? Should it? She hesitated. It should. Her voice trembled. Not from fear, from restraint. I leaned in just slightly. Then why did you call me? Her breath hitched. She didn't answer right away. When she finally did, her voice was barely a whisper. Because I don't know how not to. The words hung there, raw and reckless. My chest felt tight. I reached up before I could stop myself, brushing a damp strand of hair from her cheek. My thumb lingered longer than it should have. She didn't pull away. You shouldn't look at me like that, she said softly. How else am I supposed to look at you? Her hand found my wrist, not to stop me, just to hold it there against her skin. She closed her eyes for a moment, as if trying to memorize the feeling. This isn't fair to you, she murmured. Maybe not, I said. But it's real. Her eyes opened, glassy, conflicted, wanting. You're too young to mean that. Maybe, I said, but I still do. The room felt smaller, tighter. Her shoulder brushed mine. My pulse was loud enough I was sure she could hear it. She looked at me then, really looked, and something inside her gave way. She leaned forward, slow, uncertain, until her forehead rested against mine. Her breath trembled against my lips. This is the part where I should stop, she whispered. Then stop, I said, my voice almost a dare. Her fingers tightened to my sleeve. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. And then a knock. Sharp, sudden, familiar. Her eyes widened, breath caught between a gasp and a word she never finished. We froze, faces inches apart, suspended between what almost happened and what still could. The knock came again, firmer this time. She tore herself away, hands shaking as she smoothed her hair, trying to compose a face that wouldn't betray anything. Don't move, she whispered, voice trembling. I didn't. My pulse was still in my throat, the ghost of her breath still warm against my lips. When she opened the door, a voice slipped through, male, familiar. Elena? You weren't answering your phone. I knew the voice. It was her ex-husband. He stood there in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat, holding a folder and a look that said he didn't come just to talk. I just need 5 minutes, he said, eyes flicking past her, then landing on me. Recognition, then silence. Her body stiffened. This isn't a good time, Mark. Clearly, he said, his jaw tightening. Didn't realize you had company. I started to stand, but she shot me a glance, don't. Her hand was still gripping the edge of the door, knuckles pale. Just leave it, she said. Whatever it is. He dropped the folder onto the table near the door, papers spilling slightly. Your name's still on the apartment lease, he muttered. You should take care of that. And then he left. When the door shut, the silence that followed felt bruised. Elena leaned back against it, eyes closed. Her breathing was uneven. I stood there, not sure whether to go or to speak. Finally, she whispered, you weren't supposed to see that. You don't have to explain, I said. Her eyes opened, sharp, almost pleading. But I do, because you don't know what you're walking into. She moved toward the table, gathering the fallen papers with shaking hands. One page caught my eye. A property transfer dated a month ago. She noticed me looking. I haven't told anyone yet, she said. The divorce isn't as final as I made it sound. We're still tied on paper. The words hit harder than I expected. Not because of what they meant legally, but because of what they said about us. So you call me tonight, I said slowly, while you're still. It's not like that, she cut in, voice cracking. He hasn't lived here in months. But yes, technically, I'm still someone's wife. The room swayed a little with the weight of it. She looked up at me, eyes wet, defiant. If you think that changes what's happening between us, say it. Now, I stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the faint scent of wine and rain on her skin. My voice came out rough. It changes everything, but it doesn't make me want to stop. Her breath shuddered. She looked away, jaw tightening, then turned, walking past me toward the window. Our shoulders brushed. Her hand grazed mine in passing, just enough to spark that same current again. This can't keep happening, she said. It'll ruin both of us. Then why are you still standing this close? She froze. The air was electric. Fear and want tangled until neither could breathe. Her reflection in the glass met mine. Then she said, quietly, because I already decided. I just haven't admitted it yet. Outside, thunder rolled. Low, heavy, final. Inside, she turned toward me. Whatever came next, neither of us was going to pretend anymore. Rain again. Harder this time. It beat against the windows like it wanted in, like the night itself couldn't stand being left out of what was happening between us. Elena hadn't moved since the thunder faded. Neither had I. The space between us, just a few feet, felt like something alive, humming with every word we hadn't said. Finally, she spoke. You should hate me for this. I don't. You should, she said, her voice unsteady. I'm the one who's supposed to know better. I took a slow step forward. Then tell me to leave. Her eyes found mine, wide and bright in the dim light. You know I can't. She turned away then, as if to break the moment herself, but I caught her hand before she could. She froze, her back to me, our hands still between us. Her skin was cold from a rain that had slipped through the open window. I could feel her pulse under my thumb. Fast, uneven, fighting itself. This isn't fair to you, she whispered. You think you want me, but it's just timing. I stepped closer, close enough that my words brushed against her hair. It's not timing. It's you. She closed her eyes, head tipping slightly back, a tremor running through her. When she turned to face me, she looked different, stripped of every defense she'd been holding up since the day we met. Her voice was barely a sound. You don't know what I've done to survive being alone. Then stop surviving, I said. Just be here. Her breath caught. The kind of silence that followed was full, not empty, like something had finally given way. I reached up, my fingers tracing the side of her face, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. She leaned into it, eyes half closed, as if trying to remember what it felt like to be touched without being judged. Her hand came up to my chest, palm flat, steadying herself, or maybe steadying me. This is the part, she said quietly, where one of us is supposed to walk away. Then why aren't you? Her answer was a breath, one sharp exhale that trembled like confession. Because I'm tired of pretending I don't feel this. And then, the space between us disappeared. Not in a rush, but in surrender. Her forehead rested against mine, our breaths falling into the same rhythm. No words, no lies left, just the sound of rain and the pulse between us sinking until I couldn't tell which was hers and which was mine. When she finally pulled back, her eyes stayed on me, searching for something only she could name. We can't undo this, she said. I know. A faint smile touched her lips, sad, relieved, real. Then we don't. We live with it. And that was the truth of it. Messy, undeniable, human. The rain softened outside, and for the first time, neither of us reached for the door. Morning came softly, pale light spilling through half-drawn curtains, cutting across the floor in long, quiet lines. The rain had stopped some time before dawn, leaving the air washed clean, heavy with stillness. Elena sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her coffee untouched. I watched her from the kitchen doorway. not wanting to break the calm. She looked both older and younger in that light, like time itself had decided to pause, just long enough for her to rest. When she finally looked up, her eyes found mine without surprise. "You didn't sleep," she said. "Did you?" She shook her head. "Too much noise in my head." I sat down beside her. The silence wasn't awkward this time, just full, like something had settled between us that didn't need explaining anymore. "I keep waiting for the regret to hit," she said after a while. "It usually does. Does it feel like it's coming?" She smiled faintly. "Not yet." We didn't talk about what came next, not about her ex, not about the questions we'd have to answer eventually. The world outside could wait a little longer. She reached for her coffee, but her hand trembled. I steadied it without thinking, fingers brushing hers. She didn't pull away. "I thought I was done with this kind of thing," she said quietly. "With wanting someone like this." "Someone like what?" "Young, uncomplicated, hopeful." I laughed softly. "You think I'm uncomplicated?" Her smile deepened. "Not anymore." She leaned against me then, her head resting lightly on my shoulder. It wasn't dramatic or rushed, just real, the kind of closeness that doesn't need words to prove it exists. The warmth of her body seeped into mine, steady and grounding. I could feel her breathing, slow, calm, human. For the first time since I'd met her, she wasn't guarded. "I don't know where this goes," she whispered. "Neither do I said. "But I don't want to pretend it didn't happen." She turned her head slightly, just enough for her lips to brush my jaw, a touch so soft it felt almost like an apology. "Then don't," she said. Our hands found each other, fingers interlacing, resting between us. "No urgency, no hesitation." Just quiet acceptance. Outside, the sun started pushing through the clouds, scattering light across her hair. She closed her eyes and smiled, that slow, unguarded smile that had undone me from the start. "You know," she said, almost to herself, "you make it hard to feel old." I looked at her. "You make it easy to feel alive." She laughed under her breath, the sound soft and real. Then she turned her face up toward me, and I kissed her forehead, a simple, wordless promise. We stayed like that, still warm, certain, as the morning light filled the room. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?